Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we discuss if UCLA head coach Chip Kelly will make his return to the NFL. Why are we talking about this? Well, this is a story that I didn't see right away, so we'll read the original story, but it is starting to circle that Chip Kelly is getting interest from a lot of NFL teams. Now, as you guys know, if you're watching this, all of the NFL head coaching vacancies have been filled up. But NFL teams are interested in Chip Kelly not as a head coach, but as a offensive coordinator. So I'll go ahead and show you guys the story here from CBS. Chip Kelly is drawing interest from multiple NFL teams seeking offensive coordinators. So we'll go ahead and read this article, and then I'll give you a little bit more details of some of the teams that he might actually go to if he does in fact leave. And then I'll also talk about two here, guys. If you're a college football fan watching this, if Chip Kelly should leave and why he might actually leave. So I'll read this article and then I'll discuss all that stuff afterwards. So, a name who once dominated NFL head coaching cycles a few years ago has been on the lips of candidates from teams alike in recent weeks. Multiple sources tell CBS Sports that UCLA head coach Chip Kelly has been mentioned as a possible offensive coordinator by multiple head coaching candidates this cycle, and multiple teams have started due diligence on the former Eagles and 49ers head coach for their potential offensive coordinator vacancy. Kelly, who's 60 years old, has been at UCLA since 2018, has a 35-34 record, including a 25-13 mark in the past 3 seasons. Kelly ushered in the offensive revolution in 2010s with his hurry-up offense and RPO-laden schemes. The Eagles hired him as their head coach in 2013 after firing Andy Reid. Following Kelly's historic Oregon run that lasted just 3 seasons, and the 49ers scooped him up in 2016 as their head coach, and he went a disastrous 2-14 with San Francisco and was fired at the end of the year. Bringing Kelly to an NFL team would give the offense an instant jolt and could create instant credibility for either defensive-minded head coach or a first-timer. So that's basically it. To add a little bit more context on certain teams that have been linked to Kelly, there was the first story that I saw that made me want to talk about this was um not the Oakland Raiders, but the Las Vegas Raiders are a team that I don't know if they're interested in him, but it seems like Chip Kelly might have some interest in being the offensive coordinator for the Las Vegas Raiders. There's also a story that I read that when Dan Quinn, who just got hired as the Washington Commanders head coach today, when he was interviewing with Seattle, it was many people believed that if he was going to Seattle, it was going to be a package deal with him being Dan Quinn being the head coach and then Chip Kelly being the offensive coordinator. So a lot of people now think that because of that, that maybe Chip Kelly will be the offensive coordinator in Washington next year. So with all of that being said, I want to talk about one, why Chip Kelly would want to leave UCLA and become an NFL offensive coordinator, because a lot of people, I think, might see that as a downgrade, especially college football fans. I know if I texted one of my big college football friends and I told him that, he'd probably be kind of confused by that thing there at Chip Kelly. Now, before I get into that, I will point this out too. There was another college football head coach that left their head coaching job at a Power Five school that is now going to be the defensive coordinator of the Packers, and that is Josh Hafley. It's Hafley. I might have mispronounced the first name. Jeff Hafley. Sorry, Jeff Hafley left Boston College as a head coach, and he is now the defensive coordinator of Boston College, of the Packers. Sorry, I can't get my team straight. Um, Now, for people that don't know, that aren't familiar with this, I've interviewed over 50 people that cover college football. It's all on the audio version. I haven't posted any of that on the YouTube version yet. So I do say I have like a decent pulse of what kind of fan bases want out of their teams and their programs. And I do think I have a good pulse on whether head coaches are in the hot seat or have ever been in the hot seat. Um, Jeff Hafley, for example, at Boston College, going into this season, he was very much on the hot seat. Things seemed to be trending down for him at BC. And then they had a above average season. They won a bowl game. And it seemed like, hey, he saved his job this year. And him going to the Packers, I was like, oh, okay. But maybe that's actually for a Boston College team that's like maybe a lower tier ACC school. Maybe that is a little bit of an upgrade of going from Boston College to a NFL, coordinator job. So that one made a little bit more sense. Now to the Chip Kelly point of this, um, similar to Hafley, I think Chip Kelly, for people that aren't glued into the UCLA football program, the UCLA fans aren't necessarily like, you know, thrilled with the job that Chip Kelly has done at UCLA. I think they think that it took him a little bit longer to start winning than it should have. I think they think that a lot of these teams have underachieved. And I think UCLA thinks themselves as more than a 8-4 every season program. I think UCLA thinks that they are a program that when it was the Pac-12, that they should be a team that is competing with the Oregons, the Washingtons, the USCs, the Utahs. I think that is what they think themselves as a program. With that being said, though, it depends where you kind of like fall in this thing. Now, I haven't necessarily talked to UCLA people, about this in a while, but um, Chip Kelly is what I've heard in the UCLA. If you kind of look at some of the recruiting cycle stuff, it's not necessarily the best. Now, is that a reflection on Chip Kelly as a recruiter, or is that a reflection on the new world of college football NIL and how maybe UCLA doesn't necessarily have this big football NIL pot that maybe their new Big Ten teams have and the other teams that are leaving the Pac 12 for the Big 12 have? So if you're talking about UCLA, your Chip Kelly, the fan base is already you're already kind of on rocks with the fan base, and you're going into the Big Ten where if you say the three other Pac-12 teams that are joining them are better programs than them, you have Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. I'm already at 6 teams. Michigan State puts a lot of money into their football program. Iowa wins a lot of 10-win seasons without an offense. Wisconsin's putting a lot of money into their football program. Nebraska, I just named 10 teams without naming UCLA that are probably having better NIL, recruiting pots than UCLA. So if you're Chip Kelly, why would you want to stay at UCLA for like another 1 or 2 years and then eventually get fired? And then it's like at that point, what do you have? What do you have? Who's going to hire you as a D1 head coach? Who's going to hire you as an offensive coordinator in the NFL? So maybe the logic with Chip Kelly is like, hey, I know this UCLA thing, it's only trending downward. If I have one, below average season, he lost his 5-star quarterback that he recruited last year to the transfer portal to Oregon. If I have one more bad season, I get fired. And then, where do I go from here? I really can't like go anywhere. Maybe some sort of like G5 school would maybe hire him. But, if you have an opportunity to jump at an offensive coordinator in the NFL, maybe you do that for a few years, and maybe another college team becomes interested. Maybe another NFL team becomes interested. You convince 2 NFL teams to hire you once upon a time. Maybe you can convince a third if you actually prove that your offense can work in this current day of the NFL. So I think that's kind of the thought process of it. The other issue here that could be the thing with Kelly, and I think maybe it's part of the reason why somebody like Jim Harbaugh left for college to the NFL. I think that might be part of the reason why Nick Saban retired, is because the college recruiting thing, man, it just seems like it is exhausting because it's so unregulated. There's so much, like mischievery going on. I know that's not a word, but there's so much kind of like craziness to it. It's a 24/7 job, and you don't just have to recruit players out of high school, you don't have to recruit players in the transfer portal, you also have to keep recruiting guys after you get them on campus to stay on your team. And that just seems overworkingly like exhausting, especially if you're at a school like UCLA, where from what I've been told, maybe UCLA people can respond to me in the chat and they can, tell me where I'm wrong about this, but it just seems like a school like UCLA is at a disadvantage in their new conference, where they are on the bottom half of this when it comes to NIL and supporting their team from that sort of standpoint and in recruiting, and UCLA being a destination of where football players want to go. Now to the UCLA part of this, because I do think there's maybe some UCLA fans that might be saying this to me right now. It's like, all right, screw Chip Kelly. Screw him. We don't like him anyway. We don't like him. Trust me, I see a lot of UCLA Twitter. They don't seem like they're the biggest fans of Chip Kelly. And I'm telling you, UCLA fans, if that's how you think, sometimes I see it all the time in college football. Again, someone that's interviewed over 50 people that cover different, like it's not just 50 people general, 50 different teams. I've interviewed someone that covers just about every single Power 5 school. There's maybe like a handful I haven't done. It seems like every single time when somebody gets fired, it seems like it's always the same thing. Doesn't matter what school. It doesn't matter what school. It's like, the guy lost his recruits and the players are starting to transfer and, they had a bad season. We got rid of them. And it's like, I think a lot of times when these teams fire coaches, they keep thinking like, oh, we'll fire someone. And we know how much we love our school and we know our history of our school. And like, who wouldn't want to come and be our head coach? That's the thought process of a lot of these college football teams. And I'll tell you this, guys, a lot of times, and I see it over and over again, a team fires their coach and then they go into the head coaching cycle, hiring cycle, and they're like, we want this guy. Excuse me, I messed with that cord there. We want this guy. I think we saw it with Alabama a little bit this year where Alabama was like, we want Dan Lanning. And Dan Lanning was like, I don't want you. And they're like, oh, it's now they did get Kalen DeBoer, which is probably one of their top 2 or 3 options. So maybe that wasn't the best example, but you see it over and over and over again where these teams are like, hey, we want our first option. And then it's like the first option is like, oh, no, I'm not interested. I'm happy where I'm at. Or I'm not interested in your school. I think that happened with Florida when Florida fired Dan Mullen. And they're like, oh, we're Florida. We're Florida. Won national championships here, dude. We got this awesome history. We got all these guys that have made the NFL. Who's going to want to be our head coach? And then they go and they're like, oh, I guess we have Billy Napier now, which Billy Napier is on like, a top 10 list of like guys that are going to get fired next year. He's just going to get fired. I feel sorry for him. Obviously root for him. My mom got her master's degree at Florida, but he's on a short list of guys that are probably on the watch list to get fired very, very early next season. So that's kind of like my advisory warning to UCLA, because you guys, might be like, screw this, get rid of Chip Kelly, good riddance. But the question you have to ask, if he leaves or if you were to get rid of him, who are you getting? Who are you guys getting? Who are you getting? Tell me who. I don't know who you're getting, because I'm telling you, all of these guys that, that you might be looking at some of the Big 12, the Big 3 in the Big 12, like Matt Campbell, Chris Kleiman, Lance Leipold, and you might be like, oh, we'll just get one of those 3. Why wouldn't one of those guys want to coach at UCLA? Well, all those guys said no to Washington. So I don't think they're going to UCLA. Okay, maybe the best option's taken like one of the, Western Mountain West G5 coaches. Well, Arizona might just taken the best guy from that job from San Jose State. Like, who are you hiring? I don't know who you're going to hire, especially like we're in February right now. If Chip Kelly, let's say, leaves over this weekend, your hiring pool for UCLA here just becomes very, very small, because a lot of guys, it's harder for guys at this stage to leave than go, because they're already going to be at a disadvantage when they come into your program in like the middle of February. So, and especially too with all of the disadvantages that we said about UCLA. Yes, they are in the Big Ten, but UCLA is just going to need to. It seems like if they want to compete in that conference, they're going to have to spend a little bit more. I do think maybe they should try and become more of a developmental program than maybe like this kind of big headhunter program. But again, I don't know necessarily the history of how UCLA teams have, dominated in the past. So there you have it, guys. That's kind of all my thoughts on this Chip Kelly potentially going to the NFL thing. This might all be for naught. He might just stay at UCLA. None of these NFL teams might be actually interested in him. It could be a thing too where Chip Kelly is just trying to maybe some sort of negotiating ploy where it's like, hey, UCLA, I know you might not like me the most, but there's always a chance I could leave. So there you have it, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think. Would you want Chip Kelly to be your offensive coordinator? That's the thing too. When's the last time Chip Kelly just wasn't a head coach at a school or a job? Actually, that would be like the mid 2000s, like almost 20 years. That'd be crazy. So there you have it. Let me know in the comments. If you got this far in the video, please hit subscribe. Hit that like button. We've been doing this show for over 4 years now. We're just now starting to put our clips on YouTube, and hitting subscribe, hitting like, leaving a comment really just helps us out in the algorithm, really helps us support the show. I think it's the least you could do if you like this content. So thank you very much for watching. Explore our Sports Detective podcast page a little bit more if you want to discover other fun topics that I like to talk about. We talk NFL, obviously, college football, college basketball, NBA stuff. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you next time.